Morning, everybody. So today, when I prayed about it, I wanted to talk about the transformational space of gratitude and how that has come into my life. And when I come in, I always let it flow and honestly share with you where I am in my own journey on that. And so I wanted to talk about how I noticed how gratitude helped me get back into my own wisdom centers. And being human, we have lots of different wisdom centers, and I think we could all agree that we all have the mind, the heart, and the gut. And we all tend to prefer one of the three. So for those in the mind, they're really good at problem solving, really good at logic, really good at detail orientation. Those in the gut are really good at bottom line and getting things moving, taking action. Those in the heart, we tend to be really good at empathy and compassion and making a heart-focused connection with others. And then under stress, it's kind of like we overuse that space. So for those of us in the mind, anyone overthink, get a little bit of the analysis paralysis going on? Those in the gut, have you ever taken action, under stress, you just go do something, but you didn't think or feel about how what's gonna come out from that, so some sort of shenanigans ensue? And those of us in the heart, I kind of drowned in my emotions sometimes. And what I found out, I've had a lot of traumatic experiences happen. And if I didn't learn that space that I prefer the most of honoring, I call emotions our wisdom guides, but emotion, energy in motion, I stopped them. It's kind of like I became an emotional hoarder because I didn't really know how to honor the wisdom that came before me. So for example, I really wasn't great at boundaries. And so I was getting angry at all the time that all these people are crossing my boundaries, but I wasn't really holding the boundary. So I'd stay angry at myself and the other instead of putting energy into what that anger was there to teach me. Well, the issue for me was because of my emotional hoarding, and then my mind was overthinking the same experiences of the past, wasn't changing anything. I began to give my wisdom away to others. So I would ask other people, how can I be safe? I'd ask other people, what's good, right, and true for my path? Well, my wisdom centers are what's gonna teach me what's good, right, and true for my path. And while I believe it's true that we're all walking each other home, I have to know where my journey needs to go without expecting anybody else to know that wisdom for me. But the deal was, the more that I kept doing that, it's not that surprising that I'm like, all right, I'm not really trusting myself. And somebody'd say, well, you can trust me, come down my path. And that didn't really work out well, ever, even though I kept doing it over and over. Until I realized, I'm okay. I've worked with gratitude for a long time. And I realized if I sat with gratitude, it was kind of like gratitude and anger don't hang out together. If I'm having a party, one of them is gonna leave because they just don't like each other. So I'm gonna be more grateful. And the deal I figured out with taking a gratitude walk purposely every single day is that I stayed more present because I'm looking for what I find beautiful. I'm looking for what brings me joy. I'm focused only on the now. And it really led me to a very sacred space, which I want to invite you to take with me today. And although we're not on a gratitude walk, if you'll just go into your imagination with me and pretend we're on a grateful walk together. And we come to a space, and I say, this is one of the most, if not the most sacred spaces that you'll ever be in. Do you want to come in with me? So yes, give me, okay, all right, come on in. But to do that, would you be willing to take your shoes off? This is a very sacred space. We want to keep it clean. We want to keep it open. Let's keep it, okay, most of you do that? Okay, so I also have a basket over here, and would you be willing, because this is an extremely sacred space. It's quiet, it's peaceful. It's a place where people get realigned in their wisdom centers. Would you be willing, just for the few minutes we're going to spend there today, to take your worries and put them in that basket? So if you, in your own mind right now, picture you're taking your worries and putting them in a basket. If there's anything going on in your heart, so any anger, worries, resentment, fears, any of those, just clear it out. You've got your basket. I promise you, no one's going to steal your basket. It'll be there if you want it later. So anything in your heart, just put it in the basket. Same thing with all those thoughts in your mind, your to-do list, any negative thinking, any worrying about the past or making up things about we're just going to put all of that in the basket. Are we okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So I want you to check in, because the deal with this is the sacred space is you. So without those thoughts, without those feelings, I want you to check in and give me a yes or a no if you feel it. Is there still a presence in you? You notice there's still a presence. Can I ask you some questions about your presence? Is this presence, was it hard to find? No. Has your presence, has that always been there? Like if you think about, yeah, everybody at me, yeah, it's there. Is this a judgmental presence? Does this presence get involved with any of the drama and trauma, or more it's just an observer? It just sits back. How about, is this presence in you bigger than you? Is it like it extends? Some, you're not sure. Some of you, yeah. If it's extending, does it extend out kind of to the universe? You can't see where it stops? And in this space, can you feel your heart? Your heart opens, right? It wasn't hard to get there, but now your heart's open again. Can you feel is it still? Like your mind is stilled? The mind's stilled. It's a peaceful place. It's a very sacred space. And I sat in gratitude when I found this, because it's with gratitude that I cleared out. I put everything in the basket. And when we leave today, or you can now, it's always up to you, if you want to go back into your basket and put the worries back in, would that presence judge that? Well, okay, like Jenny, if you still want to I need to stay mad for another 6 years at this person. If you want to, okay, it's part of your experience of this thing called life. But if I choose to leave it in the basket, I call it the recycle basket. That energy will just be recycled back into the universe. You don't need to worry about where it goes anymore. It's gone. Well, the wisdom of being mad at that person stays. And never do you have to worry, because that still peaceful presence in you expands far into the universe, and that's where your wisdom comes. Because when I want to make a good decision, I want to make sure my mind is still. So I'm not, yelling about things of the past, or I'm not repeating the patterns of my past behavior, or I'm not making up how it could go bad by how it went bad in the past. Have you ever made, the best decisions we make, is it from a still mind? And from this still place, my heart opens. So when my heart is open, I can make a much better decision, a much more peaceful, loving decision than my heart being closed and protected, angry, sad, worried from things, experiences of the past. Because the deal is that I'm not my experiences. I am that presence. And that presence never leaves me, and your presence never leaves you. And the more I take those walks, the more I'm careful about when I return, what I want to let walk into this sacred space of me. Yes, experiences happen, but I picture my sacred space kind of like the ocean. Like the ocean's so expansive. And no matter, I could travel to see it all, but it's just so expansive. And any of the heavy burdens that come, I'm experiencing them so I can learn. And once I'm done learning, I can let go. But what I did was, it's kind of like I held on to those burdens in the sea, like heavy rocks. And holding on to heavy rocks in the sea, I sunk. It's harder to breathe, it's harder to live, it's harder to be happy, it's harder to be joyful. I'm just feeling like it's my responsibility to hold on to all of these burdens. And then life shook me up, so I had to let go. And just like the ocean, immediately when I let go of those burdens, I was able to rise and float and trust that I was being led wherever I was meant to be without all of those heavy burdens. So as I started realizing this, I found a story I started telling this morning, so I'll finish the story, that there was a monk who found this quiet, still place within. And he was able to sustain it. He chose it moment to moment to moment to moment. And when the darkness and the burdens found out that, wait a minute, he's not holding on to anything, he's not being sunk, the darkness sent out 3 of their best troublemakers to come to this monk. And the head of the darkness and the head of the burdens said to the troublemakers, what's going on with you? Why haven't you sunk him? And we tried. Literally, we had his best friend have relations with his wife, and he chose the peace and the stillness. We went and we put words into all of his children. They said, you're an awful father. We hate you. You're not good enough. You'll never be a good father for us. We don't love you. And he stayed in his, that's their experience, but I love them. He stayed in this peace and stillness. So he said, well, I want you to follow him everywhere he goes. I want you to keep handing him burdens. I want you to keep, they literally came after him because he was so still. And so he eventually moved into a monastery. And his job in the monastery was to keep the Zen garden clean. So every single day he went and kept the Zen garden clean, and he'd meditate. And the troublemakers came and were sitting next to him. And before you know it, 2 of them started meditating with him. And the third one's like, stop it. You're getting too peaceful. We're troublemakers. We don't meditate. So they had to keep a little bit of their distance from him. And before you knew it, this big wind came. So, and a limb fell into the Zen garden that he was going to take care of. So he got up out of his meditation and kind of went, got the limb out, went back to meditate. And the 3 troublemakers went, ooh. So guess what they did? They kept screwing up the Zen garden, putting sticks in, putting rocks in, moving things around. And so he kept having to get up. And they're like, we found something that brought him out of his peace and stillness. So I would have you think about, what's your twig? Because some things now in life, you hold that sacred space. And other things, it might seem not like a big deal. You're like, how could this monk get through all of these other things and a little twig cause some irritation? It's the same thing with us, right? We all have a different twig or twigs. So what is it that's so important that it's pulling you out of the space where the wisdom of your journey comes in? Because when I'm still and peaceful, I make better decisions for myself, and I understand that's on my journey. Not everybody's going to get it or understand it, or I'm not always going to walk the same path as other people, and that's just fine when I'm in that space. But pull me out of it, forget it. And now I'm going back into I'm like, where's that basket? I thought, can I get my recycled basket back of all these thoughts, all these emotions that they're just there to teach me for a little while. Because anger, like if you cross my boundary, anger is there to say no, Because if I say, oh, please don't do that, versus no, there's a difference, right? So anger just comes in to help me keep myself safe and on my path, out of the weeds, out of other people pulling me to what they want me to do. I don't have to be angry about my anger. I don't have to judge my anger, because then it all turns into resentment. And that one's harder sometimes to get out of our heart. So today I invite you to keep a basket. And it's okay, there's no judgment. First thing I put in my basket is my judgment. Like, how did I get back to that again? Like I'm swirling around in my thoughts, or swirling around in the past, or making things up about the future. Like if I'm going to use my mind and heart and gut, I'd rather pretend, because that's what we're doing with our imagination. Why not, instead of what's the worst that's going to happen today and let's plan for that, is what if the best happened today? And let's plan for that. So I invite you every day to keep a basket. And I usually like to keep my basket that can be recycled outside of the house, so I keep my own house sacred. Like, most of us would be really careful if you got a brand new white carpet that you're not going to tramp in mud everywhere. Same thing, that you're very sacred within. Don't tramp in all your worries and all the anger and all the shenanigans. What is it that you don't need to carry? When can you let yourself rise? Let yourself float. And trust the universe is always, when you're in that still place, carrying you where exactly you need to go. So I thank you for everything you choose. Anybody going to recycle something today? Yeah. All right, good. Lots of recyclers. And knowing, was it hard to find that still place in you? Like, I didn't make you do hours of meditation. It's just there. So knowing anytime you want to go back, it's just there. And it's sacred. And the moment that I started treating that space in me sacred with gratitude, my whole life shifted. So I hope as we go on about our day today, if you and I run into each other, that we greet each other from our still space and say gratitude for how much we know, the lessons that it took us to put everything we no longer need in that basket and just encounter each other as the grace that we are. So thank you for your time today, and I'm grateful for you being you.